When people move into a new house, they might receive cookies, a welcome basket, or at least a warm welcome from the residents in the neighborhood. But turned out to be entirely different for the Broaddus family. They were threatened, stalked, and emotionally abused by an anonymous individual after they purchased their new home at 657 Boulevard, Westfield, New Jersey. In June 2014, Derek and Maria Broaddus bought their dream house for $1.3 million. This purchase was meant to be the start of a new blissful chapter with their 3 kids, but they couldn't be more wrong. 3 days after closing the deal on the residence, Derek went to the house to do some work, seeing as they wanted to tweak things to suit their taste. Even though they hadn't moved in, he decided to check the mailbox. To his surprise, there was a mail addressed to the new owners. The letter began with, "Dearest new neighbor at 657 Boulevard, allow me to welcome you to the neighborhood." The letter went on to be the most unwelcoming message anyone could receive. It read, 657 has been the subject of my family for decades now, and as it approaches its 110th birthday, I have been put in charge of watching and waiting for its second coming. My grandfather watched the house in the 1920s and my father watched it in the 1960s. It is now my time. Do you know the history of this house? Do you know what lies within the walls of 657 Boulevard? Why are you here? I will find out. As the letter progressed, it became more eerie and threatening. In the letter were details about the family which no one would have known if they weren't watching them. It highlighted that they drove a Mercedes and a Honda minivan. The writer also stated that they counted about 3 children the couple had brought to visit the house. The letter read, "Do you need to fill the house with young blood?" I requested, and added they would steal the couple's children away. The letter was signed, The Watcher. Yes, this, The Watcher, is the same as the one depicted in the new Netflix series, The Watcher. The events of that mystery series are based on the horrific experiences of the Broaddus family at 657 Boulevard. Absolutely terrified by the letter, Derek and Maria contacted the old couple, John and Andrea Woods, that had sold the house to them. The couple said they had lived there for over 2 decades and never received such a letter until the day before they moved out. However, they didn't take the note seriously and simply threw it in the trash. Both couples reported the incident to the police and were advised not to speak about it to anybody, as anyone could have sent the letter. The couple continued with their renovations of the house with the hopes of moving in soon. However, the Watcher wasn't done with them. 2 weeks after receiving the first letter, another arrived in their mail. This particular letter gave intense personal details about the family. The letter included their family name, although misspelled as Broaddus. It was either a writing mistake or this anonymous individual had heard the name while listening to the family's conversations. The Watcher also knew the Broaddus children's nicknames, meaning they listened in on conversations. The letter indicated that the Watcher had seen the couple's youngest child painting in the house. At this point, the couple decided to postpone moving in indefinitely and stop taking their children to the house. Unfortunately, their absence from the home was not enough to keep the Watcher away. A third letter arrived. It read, "Where have you gone? 657 Boulevard misses you." It was certain that this stalker wouldn't leave them to enjoy their new home peacefully. Due to these letters, Derek and Maria each suffered from depression and PTSD. The house was more than they bargained for, so they decided to sell it. Unfortunately, the rumors about the Watcher had spread, and no one wanted to buy it. However, these rumors also turned the house into a sensation everyone wanted to write about, causing the house to become popular. The Broaddus family convinced a developer to buy the home, tear it down, and split the lot and create 2 separate dwellings. The planning board rejected this building plan because each lot will be 3 feet lesser than the mandated size for every building in the neighborhood. The family was again stuck with the house and still couldn't move in. Later in 2018, they found a family who agreed to rent the house, but with a term in the lease agreement that they could back out of the deal if they received a letter from the Watcher. Only 2 weeks after the new family moved in, there was a letter in the mailbox. This letter was spiteful and disdainful, unlike the previous ones that were slightly threatening but still casual. This letter read, "To the vile and spiteful Derek and his wench of a wife Maria." The writer went on to talk about how 657 Boulevard survived the numerous attempts from Derek and Maria to bring its existence to an end. According to this anonymous individual, they were behind the failure of their attempts to tear it down. The Broaddus family was also threatened with an incurable illness, the death of a pet or family member. The letter was spiteful, and it seemed like a personal vendetta. Despite this letter, the new family remained in the house and added more security cameras. Later, in 2019, a family agreed to buy the house for $959,000. This was a house the Broadduses had bought for $1.3 million, excluding agency fees, the $100,000 for the property taxes, insurance, and the renovations they did. This sale was a massive loss, but they just needed the peace that came with having the house out of their hands. Since the new family moved in, they hadn't received any letters from the Watcher. Even though the Watcher got off the family's back, every family member is scarred for life from the incident. Who could this noxious person who stole a family's happiness be? Did they have a personal connection to the Broaddus family? There have been some suspicions as to the identity of the Watcher. Let's review some of them and see if any are feasible. The first persons on the list are Derek and Maria Broaddus themselves. Shocking? We know. This was the same scenario with Skinwalker Ranch, where a family was accused of springing up false information about extraterrestrial creatures on a new property they purchased. The Broaddus had moved from a $315,000 home to a $770,000 home before purchasing 657 Boulevard worth a whopping $1.3 million. And they were all purchased with refinancing mortgages. A faction of the public believes the couple realized they might have gone beyond their capability with 657 Boulevard and were desperate to get out of the house purchase. So they came up with the letter ploy, but it didn't work. Also, after the planning board rejected the proposal, neighbors received anonymous letters threatening them from someone who claimed to be friends of the Broaddus family. The letters were traced back to Derek. This meant he could have been the one sending the mail to his house. Some people believed the Broaddus family could not have orchestrated the whole plan of the Watcher, and instead these people preferred to look at non-members of the family. Robert Kaplow was one of the suspects examined. He was an English teacher at Summit High School, just 2 towns away from Westfield. People who knew Robert claimed he was obsessed with Westfield, where he had grown up, and a house there, even though he didn't disclose the house in particular. He wrote a book called Me and Orson Welles, which heavily referenced Westfield. His students recounted him talking about the house at length. Another student reported that Robert had planned to write letters to the house and had written about 50 letters in total. Generally, they described his attachment to the house as an obsession. There were also some other connections of Robert to the house, except hearsay. He retired from teaching in June of 2014, coinciding with the month and the year the first letter arrived at the Broaddus residence. Adding to this, Robert's brother, Richard, lived just half a block away from 657 Boulevard, meaning he could have spied on the Broaddus family for his brother. Interestingly, Richard was Wood's attorney when the Broaddus family sued them. Could all of these have been a coincidence? Well, that would be a whole new level of coincidence. Lastly, we have an individual named The Gamer. The Gamer became a suspect as a result of the police investigation. After the first series of letters, police were deployed to the area to surveil the house. At around 11 p.m. one night, they noticed a car stop suspiciously in front of the house before zooming off. The car's number plate was traced to a woman whose boyfriend resides blocks away from 657 Boulevard. When the woman was questioned about 657 Boulevard, she shrugged off the question and casually said that her boyfriend was into games and used the pseudonym The Watcher. The boyfriend was invited for questioning, which he agreed to, but he never showed up. Responding to these accusations of being the Watcher, Derek and Robert Kaplow have both come out to debunk them, with accompanying explanations for their actions. Frankly, an offender would never willingly confess to the crime, but let us give Robert and Derek the benefit of the doubt and examine their stories. Then we can determine if the stories hold water. Derek claimed that he had only written those threatening letters to his neighbors because he was frustrated about the whole situation and their inability to get out of the situation. He denied being the Watcher and added that he had gotten the letter idea from his experience receiving the letters from this anonymous individual. Also, the letter from the Watcher wasn't restricted to the Broaddus family. Apparently, another family on Boulevard had received a similar letter when the first mail arrived at 657, but this family wasn't fazed and simply ignored it. Likewise, it doesn't make sense that the couple would render their home unattractive to buyers if they actually wanted to sell it out and get it off their hands after realizing they couldn't afford it. When they finally sold it, they lost over $500,000. On the other hand, Robert confessed to writing letters to a Westfield house but claimed it wasn't 657 Boulevard. The house was a Victorian house, and the letters he had written were to express his admiration of the house and were in no way threatening. Robert later became close friends with the owners of the Victorian house. The Watcher had gone radio silent for over 3 years and managed to remain anonymous. But the story would forever remain imprinted on everyone's minds, especially the Broaddus family. Which of these suspects is more viable as the Watcher? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section. Thank you for watching, and we hope you enjoyed the video. Please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Likewise, turn on notifications so you never miss a video.